The story of a song that touched the hearts of millions.
Life is easy.
The story of the man who wrote those words.
It's really pretty amazing that it came so simply in the middle of the night.
You've got peace of mind.
It's as if really the song was a message to me.
And the artists who shared its message of hope.
When you heard the McKameys sing God on the Mountain, you felt like they had lived God on the Mountain.
Everywhere you turned, all you heard was God on the Mountain. It was a phenomenon.
When Lynda picked it up, it was just a magic recording. There's something about it that had magic in it.
It lifts our hearts.
God allows some writers to write songs that are life-changing songs.
And strengthens our faith in the one true God.
He just has taken the very simplest thing, 72 words and 4 chords, and used it to really touch a lot of hearts and lives. It's a humbling thing.
We'll explore the legacy of one of gospel music's favorite songs.
The God on the mountain is still God in the valley. Children were thirsting in the wilderness, and Moses cried, "Oh Lord, what shall I do?" Then he heard the voice of God saying, "Moses, take your rod, strike the rock, and waters will come flowing through. Let me be a rock from which the living waters flow. To a river deep and wide, though I may never know everywhere the waters go. Let the thirsty drink and souls be satisfied. Let the thirsty drink and souls be satisfied."
Ready, 8 on the dissolve, push 8, dissolve 8.
Let it flow. Let it flow to a river deep.
Ready, 1, and take 1.
Though I may never know everywhere the waters go, let the thirsty drink and souls be satisfied. Let the thirsty drink and souls be satisfied. Let me be a rock from which the living waters flow. From which the living waters flow.
Wonderful, the Darts. Awesome, guys. Isn't that great?
Tracy Dartt was born in 1944 in St. Paul, Minnesota. The younger of 2 sons born to Claude and Virginia Dartt. His brother Donald was 18 years old and had already left home by the time Tracy was born. So Tracy grew up as an only child in an apartment above a plumbing supply shop in downtown St. Paul.
I suppose we were poor, but we really didn't know we were poor because everybody else around us was too. I figured that it's just the way everybody lived, so we lived with it.
Tracy's father was a construction worker. A bear of a man, Claude had once been the heavyweight boxing champion of the Minnesota National Guard. He worked hard at his job, but his ability to care for his family was greatly impaired by an addiction to alcohol.
When he'd get on a drunk, he'd like to go down to the corner bar and start a fight. He was a strong, powerful man. So when he got mad and started hitting people, that was ugly.
Claude was abusive in the home, but never toward Tracy. His violent outbursts were directed toward his wife, Virginia. The years of watching the abuse took its toll on young Tracy, and by age 15, he'd had enough. It all came to a head one night during one of Claude's drunken episodes.
I knocked him down on the floor and picked up a kitchen chair, which was a heavy, heavy oak chair, and almost came to the point where I was crashing it down on his head but a friend of his that was there at the time stopped me, and just in the nick of time, or I probably would have killed him.
Virginia realized they were headed for disaster. She secretly spoke with Tracy about her thoughts of leaving Claude.
She said she'd been thinking about it for some time, but was afraid of my reaction to it. But I said, Mom, let's get out of here.
They packed up their belongings and moved across the states to start a new life in Southern California. Tracy would see his father only one more time in his life. Born the third of 8 children, Sharon Snyder was raised in a home filled with music and a sense of devotion to God. Family life centered around the church, and Sharon came to know Christ at an early age. She remembers how her pastor's wife had a particular impact on her life.
She taught the teenage girls, and she told us that God had someone for you that would be your husband someday, and that you should pray for the Lord to watch over him, and that he would be saved, and that he'd be kept safe, and he would come to you when the time was right. And so I did that. I prayed for my husband wherever he was, and I always felt like that had something to do with my husband, Tracy, moving from Minnesota out to California where I lived.
Sharon first met Tracy Dartt while attending Los Altos High School. Both were involved in the school's exciting music department, headed up by Mr. Richard Riggs. Tracy had begun to show a talent for singing and was often cast in lead roles for Mr. Riggs' elaborate stage productions.
Tracy would be in the Mikado. I can just picture him in his oriental outfit, trembling at the thought of being executed. And in HMS Pinafore, he was one of the leads, and actually was written up in the newspaper by the art critics, so he was quite a treasure for the music teacher to use in those plays, while I was in the chorus in the background.
Richard Riggs was a great influence on my life. He got me started coming to church so I could sing in the church choir. It was in that church that I eventually accepted Christ as my Savior.
After high school, Tracy and Sharon fell in love and were married in 1964. They began their life together, determined to make Christ the center of their home.
I remember one service shortly before we were married. A speaker asked if people would like to make a commitment to give their life to the Lord, and more of an absolute commitment than just salvation, for whatever the Lord wanted. I remember that Tracy and I both stood, and we had no idea what our life would be. We didn't think of music. It wasn't a moment of high emotion. It was just a decision that we knew in our hearts we were willing for that.
Tracy took a job at the Boise Cascade Corporation and started a climb up the corporate ladder. His nights and weekends were spent singing bass for a local gospel group called the Stewart's Quartet. But in 1967, Tracy was asked to join the Victors, an up-and-coming quartet that had just signed with Capitol Records in Hollywood.
Gone are the dreams of yesterday.
At the time, the Victors were the only Southern gospel group signed with a major label.
My friend Al Harkins, who was the manager of the group, helped me to get started writing songs. The first song that I wrote, Brand New Feeling, became the title song for our Capitol album.
When Tracy sang with the Victors, the wives would go to most of the concerts. We always had our little children along. I was very proud of Tracy. I was just glad to stand by him afterwards so they would know that I was with Tracy and he was with the group.
Yes, we were very, very young then. We had a good sound, I believe, and it was progressive. A little bit of modern type of thing, you know. It was actually one of the most exciting times, I believe, in gospel music. You could have all-night sings, and people would stay
Southern Gospel field on the West Coast, especially in Southern California, was pretty active at that time. You had the quartets that were coming in from Nashville, but the next best thing was some of the local groups from Southern California. They were as good as some of the nationally known groups that traveled all over the country.
Networking in the Hollywood music scene opened up many doors for the Victors and gave Tracy the opportunity to learn from some of the industry's top professionals.
Watching the songwriters and learning from them, I learned how to judge and critique my own music. Those Capitol years were good years.
As their popularity grew, the Victors remained a part-time group. It was an exciting time for Tracy, but he and Sharon began to feel a calling to make ministry a full-time occupation. A chance to make that happen came in 1972 when Tracy was invited to sing bass for one of Southern Gospel's most legendary pioneers. Lily Fern Goebel was born in 1928 in Bethany, Oklahoma. Her father was the pastor of a local Nazarene church. What is now recognized as an illustrious career started with humble beginnings.
I don't remember when I did not sing. I sang all my life. And my parents told me that I was singing harmony before I could even talk plain. Back years ago, I didn't sing with anybody important or anything. I just sang at church, and I sang to my paper dolls and to my dolls and all this thing. But then I met a young man named Earl Weatherford.
Lily Fern was just 15 when she met the man that would be her husband, a handsome young musician with his own traveling quartet. The two fell in love and were married in 1945. Lily had a distinctive singing voice, but Earl strictly maintained an all-male quartet. Lily's eventual move into the group started one concert night with an under-the-weather tenor.
The tenor singer got sick at the last minute and couldn't be there. And I didn't even know it. I was sitting out in the audience, and Earl said, "I'm going to ask my wife to come up and sing with us tonight." And I said, no, I can't do that. He said, "Yeah, well, I need you up here." And I got up there and did the concert, scared to death, until I got through the first song, and then I thought, this isn't so bad after all. And I've been singing ever since, most of the time. Now, Earl would have the mixed quartet, and then he would think, I want a male quartet. So he'd hire a guy to come in and drop me out and put this tenor in. And all this time we were on radio every day out in California. People would write into the radio station, and Earl opened a letter that came to the radio station and said, "We really like that one tenor that you keep bringing back in there. Why don't you just leave him in there?" Talking about me. So I finally said, "Look, do you want me to sing or do you not want me to sing?" And he said, "I want you to sing." I said, "Then leave the tenors alone and get me in there for good." And he did.
The Weatherfords were a part-time group, using weekends and vacation days to tour and sing. But God had bigger things in store for Earl and Lily Fern. It was during a revival meeting in Wichita, Kansas, that they both felt a sense of God's direction.
I knelt to pray, and Earl knelt to pray. I saw him kneeling down up in the choir loft. And it seems, I didn't hear an audible voice or anything like that, but I thought, this is what God wants me to do. I want to be in something that's winning souls for Christ. We got back to the room where we were staying, and I said, "Earl, I've got to talk to you." And he says, "Let me talk to you first." And he told me this practically the same thing that I had been thinking when I was down there praying. God works in those ways. We promised God that night that we would be working for Him, we would sing for Him, and Him only. And we promised Him we'd go any place that He'd open the doors and let us sing and make a way. And He did.
Over the next 2 decades, the Weatherfords garnered a long and impressive list of alumni, having been instrumental in launching the careers of many well-known artists.
We had a lot of people come and go in that length of time, but in 1972, he wanted to start completely over with a new group, just he and I. And he got hold of a young man named Tracy Dartt.
Earl met Tracy Dartt at a concert where the Weatherfords shared the stage with the Victors Quartet. Tracy wanted to sing full-time, and a fellow bandmate encouraged Earl Weatherford to check out Tracy's skills.
Earl had asked me to come sing lead. Tracy and I have been such great friends down through the years, and we had such a fine relationship working together and so much fun. So I told Earl, I said, I wish you'd listen to Tracy. Man, he can sing great bass. He heard Tracy, and that clinched it.
The two friends moved their families to Oklahoma. They joined Earl, Lily, and piano maestro Haskell Cooley to form the Weatherfords' new lineup.
We learned a great deal about blend and balance and execution and stage presence working with Earl and Lily. Great people. I'm very much indebted to them.
When Tracy Dartt came into the group, we went to a little bit higher step spiritually. He brought to us some great music, and we were winning people to the Lord every night.
Whatsoever things are true,
The group was a perfect forum for Tracy's writing, and his songs soon became an important part of the Weatherford sound.
We were the very first to record The Last Sunday.
Mrs. Jones does her knitting.
We knew that Tracy was writing a song called The Last Sunday, but really we had no idea the impact that song would be. When the cathedrals heard the Weatherfords sing The Last Sunday, they picked it up immediately.
That became a hit for the cathedrals. It was their first really big radio hit. It got to #2 nationwide and was 19 months in the top 40.
It was so unique, so different than anything we'd heard before. And those were the kind of songs that Earl liked to get hold of. The Last Sunday was, if nobody has it, they need to get it, by the Weatherfords.
It was a pivotal moment in Tracy's career, and although his time with the Weatherfords was brief, the experience had a major impact on his life.
Our connection with Sharon and Tracy Dartt have been some really precious times, and were always very special to Earl and I.
I learned so much from Earl about being on the road and many things that have become tools that strengthened our ministry over the years.
In 1974, the Dartts returned to California, settling in the high desert town of Apple Valley.
Rolling down a dusty country highway.
Tracy became a partner in a swimming pool construction company. To keep his music ministry alive, he started a new group with friends June and Dale Wade, this time with wife Sharon by his side. They called themselves the Country Congregation.
It's a country congregation.
Drawing from Tracy's connections in Hollywood, the Country Congregation prepared to make a record. But as plans were underway, there was trouble back at the pool company.
As we got down to the end of the building season, the bank account started dwindling, and I mentioned it to my partner. He said, well, we'll check it out. So I did, and discovered that we were actually losing money on every swimming pool we were making.
Tracy was determined to make good on his contracts. Thus began a year of tremendous struggle for the Dartts. It would eventually result in the loss of their business and the loss of their home.
Going through that business loss and the trauma of trying to make all of this work, that's when I wrote God on the Mountain. I got up in the middle of the night, about 2 o'clock in the morning. I don't even remember it as being a high emotional kind of thing. It was just like, oh, here this is. This has to be taken care of. It has to be done, I wrote God on the Mountain and another song, Sing Me an Old Gospel Song. I'd write the verse to one and the verse to another, chorus to one, the chorus to the other. About 30 minutes, finished both songs, went back to bed.
It's really pretty amazing that it came so simply in the middle of the night. I've always felt like the Lord just gave that to him for a gift. Not that he wasn't experiencing a valley, Not that he didn't feel those things, but that it was just something that God gave to him all in a piece.
It's as if really the song was a message to me. God's taking me through this. We are going to get through this because our God is God. The battle's already won. The victory's ours.
With his new songs in hand, Tracy made a trip to L.A. to meet with publisher friend Hal Spencer.
I heard Tracy talk about some new songs that he had written, and I listened to a couple, and then he said, Hal, this one's just a simple little song that I wrote. You might be interested in it. And then he started singing God on the Mountain. It was a simple little song, but it had a message that touched the hearts of people who listened to it.
It was in Capitol Records Studio A where the country congregation set out to record their debut project. 9 of the 10 songs were written by Tracy, and it was the first time God on the Mountain was ever recorded.
Life is easy.
As the sessions drew to a close, almost everyone agreed. One song stood out as the sure winner. The song, a heartfelt ballad called Mama.
Jesus, Mama never knew that I gave my life to you.
Everybody in the studio was weeping. Everybody was crying, even the recording engineer. My impression from that, looking around everyone and seeing the tears, was, well, here it is. This is our hit song. So I mentioned this to my friend Don Lee, who was playing guitar for us and was helping me with the production. He's wiping the tears away from his eyes, and he said, no. He said, no. He said, it's a good song. He said, but that's not it. And I said, well, if we choose something off of this for radio, what is there? He said, well, God on the Mountain. He said, that's the hit.
The God on the mountain is still God in the valley.
We all looked at each other and rolled our eyes around and said, yeah, sure, right. I mean, after we're all weeping over Mama, God on the Mountain is going to be the hit. Sure enough, that was the hit song, even though it didn't hit for the country congregation. I look back on that morning, sitting on the edge of the bed and scratching those notes on the pad, and you think, how could that be? How can you take what amounted to 15 minutes of your time in your life and sit down and write something that can be used in such a way?
The year was 1976, and much had taken place in the lives of Tracy and Sharon Dartt. After losing everything in the collapse of their pool business, the Darts moved back to Los Angeles, leaving the country congregation behind. But now God was opening up new doors, and in the spring of '76, Tracy embarked on a full-time ministry as a gospel soloist. When word got out, Tracy's schedule filled up quickly, and the Dartt family hit the road.
It was so much different to be traveling and singing and then having the family along. It was just a marvelous family time that we had together in those early years.
Over the next several years, Tracy wrote hundreds of songs and recorded 9 solo projects.
Sing me another mountain song.
In some circles, he was best known for his comedy tunes, the most popular of which was a little song called A Matter of Policy.
At the First Nazareth Method, Baptist Coastal, Seventh-day Orthodox, Lutheran, non-denominational Church of Our Lady of the Mind.
Everywhere we'd go, people would request that song. And so much so that I really was sure that that's what I'd be remembered for.
Tracy began producing records for other artists. It was then that Hollywood came calling with the chance of a lifetime.
We had this opportunity to produce a double album set for Roy Rogers and Dale Evans and Roy Rogers Jr. We did it at Capitol Records in Hollywood. Dale Evans' early career was in the big bands in the 30s as a singer. So we did some big band orchestrated numbers. Boy, she was just having a load of fun. Nobody had done that for her for years, making that kind of a production. Roy Jr. Did a marvelous job with his country, thanks to. It was a wonderful experience working with Roy Rogers and Dale Evans. They were heroes of mine, growing up as a kid, going to the Western movies and watching them on television with the early days of their TV show. So it was really quite an experience to be able to produce that album for them.
In 1988, the Darts found themselves at a turning point. Tracy had been a quartet man, a soloist, a hit songwriter, and record producer. But in the summer of '88, a little church in the mountains of Central California invited him to be their minister. Within weeks, Tracy accepted the call and became the new pastor of the Aubury First Baptist Church.
Tracy thought to himself that probably his music would be put aside now. Maybe it never had become what he thought it might be. Right at that time, that song showed up again.
I got a telephone call from Hal Spencer from Man of Music, who's our publisher. Hal said, "Tracy, your song is number 10 nationwide." And I thought, what's he talking about? I said, "What song? It was number 10 in what?" He said, "In the Singing News gospel chart." He said, "Your song's number 10, God on the Mountain." I thought, God on the Mountain? Who sang God on the Mountain? He said, "Well, the McKameys."
We were talking on the phone. I said, "I want you to hear something." And I put the cassette on, put the receiver up to it, and that was the beginning.
We couldn't believe it. It was like God letting us know that he was taking over the promotion of the songs that we'd thought we were trying to get out. The time came for that song to be heard by hundreds of thousands of people and to go around the world.
In the mountains where I was raised, music was a pastime. We just sat around and sang just because we enjoyed each other's company and the songs that we were singing. And we sat out on the porch and sang, and the neighbors would come and join in.
Peg McKamey was the daughter of Reverend and Mrs. Ed McKamey. Her father pastored a little church in the hills of Tennessee.
Folks would introduce my dad as the minister, and he would go to the pulpit singing a song. And sometimes in the middle of his message, he would just holler, "I love you, Lord," and he'd start singing. And then there was times when he would close his message. After the message, he would close in a song, and he'd just walk to his seat as he was singing a song.
Ed McKamey's ministry and heart for the people gave young Peggy a vision for what God could do with her life.
I saw my daddy encourage folk that were just really depressed, defeated, and his words and his smile would encourage them and bring them out of that place they were. And I thought, wow, that is a wonderful work. If God can use him, he can use me, he can use anybody.
The McKameys began as the McKamey sisters, Dora, Carol, and Peg. But they were soon joined by another preacher's kid, Ruben Bean.
I met up with them when they came to my home church to sing, really. It's how I met, and from there I started playing guitar for them. I'll have to admit, I was the bashful one. Back then, you didn't have many fast food places to eat, but you got invited to people's homes to eat. And of course, we was traveling around in the car singing, and I'd stay in the car. I was too bashful to go in and eat with the folk. I'd do it without rather than go in.
It was during those early years on the road that Peg and Ruben fell in love. And after a 2-year courtship, they married in 1959.
We've spent our lives together. We were just teenagers when we got married, and we've been singing and trying to encourage folk and lift the Lord high all these years.
The McKameys recorded their first long-play album in 1967 with Sister Dora in her usual spot as lead singer. Comfortable with his supportive role, Ruben Bean was in for a shock one afternoon during a concert in Alexandria, Virginia.
Dora, she just backed out of the way and said, "Ruben, it's you. Go ahead and do the talking." And of course, I was scared to death. But I guess that broke a little bit of the ice,
After many years of part-time ministry, the McKameys felt the call to go full-time. And in 1980, Peg and Ruben made that transition with their 2 daughters, Connie and Cheryl. The group lineup would change over the years, but God's blessing on their ministry remained a constant.
As the ministry grew, we were just astonished. at the growth it took. And I've often said this, and I still say it, that God will promote who He wants to promote. And I felt like He promoted us because I don't feel like I've got enough sense to do it myself. But He's opened doors that we country mountain folk shouldn't be getting through. But He opened the doors for us, and we just had enough sense to go through them.
Emphasizing ministry more than entertainment was important to the McKameys, and they searched for a record label that would support their vision. They found what they were looking for in Morning Star Records, a division of the Eddie Crook Company.
They came to my house. We made an arrangement right then for them to record with me, and I hadn't heard them sing. I mean, how about that?
The relationship with Eddie Crook was a productive one, and over the next few years, the McKameys enjoyed success over the airwaves. They topped Southern Gospel radio charts with 2 number-1 hits, Who Put the Tears in the Eyes of the Lamb in 1984, and Getting Used to the Dark in 1987. But in 1988, something took place that no one could have expected.
The best I remember, a lady friend of the wife's sent her a cassette tape of a camp meeting service, and there was a trio that got up before the preacher preached and sang, and one of the songs they sang was God on the Mountain. She really was touched with the song. She said, I want to do that song.
I didn't have any idea how God intended to use it because it wasn't the fullness of His time yet. It wasn't time. He wasn't ready, and we weren't ready. And I can see now, in retrospect, He was preparing us for it.
We were coming up for recording a live video at the time, and she insisted on doing it. We didn't really know the song that well, or I didn't think we did. And up to the very day that we taped, I tried to talk her out of doing it. I said, we don't know it.
We didn't have any more songs, at that time that we could use. I said, Bud, we don't have a choice. This is it. Another God thing.
This facility in Hendersonville, Tennessee was available, a Music Village Theater. We just chose that because that seemed to be the logical place to go that would hold the people.
That facility at the time was for sale, so we had to go in and kind of blow the cobwebs out of some things to make them work, and so it was a long day. And it was with a live band, with studio musicians.
That afternoon in our rehearsals, we were going over all the songs, and we got to this song called God on the Mountain. I reckon God impressed me. I came up with this little intro that seemed to catch. It kind of became the recognizable intro. Every time you heard that intro, you knew what was coming. It was God on the Mountain. I had no idea that it was going to be heard as much as it did get heard. That night, everything was kind of bumping along. And then we got to this song, God on the Mountain. Then, of course, the band played that intro that we had devised, that afternoon.
Life is easy when you're up on the mountain.
When we started that song, the Lord just come in that place. I can't explain it. I know how it feels, but I just can't explain it.
A friend of mine's father was dying with cancer. They were sitting right on the front row, and people in the audience with different problems that I knew about that they'd shared with me. I could see what was going on in the hearts of others, and I was trying to drive that home to them.
People in the audience were shouting, and I don't know if you people understand what that is, but people get moved by the Spirit, they shout, at least in some in the South. All of that was just kind of happened, and fortunately, tape was rolling.
I knew that we captured a great evening. I knew that what we had was marketable and it was sellable and it was going to do well, but I couldn't have told you at that point that any one song was going to be better than the other one. But when it was released as a single, it was obvious.
Eddie Crook was our record company, Morning Star Records, and he and Dave Wilcox being the radio person, they didn't even consult us. They just, when the recording was done, they sat down and watched it and edited that video. They said, hey, that's the song. I mean, it was apparent that it was.
It went to radio, and radio stations had it a few days, and then the phone started ringing. It didn't take long for us to understand that we was going to have to ramp up our inventory on the album that contained God on the Mountain.
From an employee's standpoint, it was thrilling to hear God on the Mountain on the radio and hear all the buzz about it. But what was funny to watch, and honestly from a business side, it was very exciting to watch, was those boxes that were going out the warehouse door. If the Eddie Crook Company had had a genuine conveyor belt at that time, that thing would have ran 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, just trying to keep up with the demand.
We never had any idea. Our record company didn't have any idea. It hit us all by surprise.
It just towered over every other song that we had, and the Lord knows that we've had some great songs, but it just sort of took over and mushroomed.
Typically, songs will enter the Singing News chart perhaps at number 80, number 63, 43. God on the Mountain debuted at number 10.
It went from 10 straight to number 1 and stayed there 5 months, which is almost an unheard of thing. On the chart, number 1 for 5 months. And DJs would tell me personally, hey, if it weren't for new music coming in here and I had to, it probably still would be number 1. And then being on the chart, period, almost 2 years. That's another incredible thing.
When I got the news that God on the Mountain had now become a hit, and it was number 1 song, I got to thinking how many times I had pushed and pushed and pushed, trying to get things to happen, get songs out to different places. Here the McKameys picked up on this song. It hadn't been anything I'd promoted at all. It's just all the Lord. And of course the scripture says, you know, the Lord is the one who lifts one up and puts another down. So he's the best promoter you can get.
After an incredible run on radio, God on the Mountain was nominated for a Dove Award and won Voice Magazine's Song of the Year. It was also awarded Song of the Year at the 1989 Singin' News Fan Awards. It had been 15 years since Tracy Dartt penned those words, and on that night, he joined the McKameys on stage for the awards presentation. It was a milestone for them all.
Wow, Song of the Year for radio stations everywhere. And a station in Alaska said, God on the Mountain is not only Song of the Year, it is the Song of the Century. And you know, in my calculation, I think that's 100 years, isn't it? I thought, wow. Up in Alaska, they say God on the Mountain is the Song of the Century.
When I look back on it, I know it wasn't anything that we did. It had to have been God's plan to happen like that, and He chose to promote that song, and He did. I didn't know this till after the fact, but there were other groups that bought that cassette from our record company and sold it off their table because of God on the Mountain. I never heard of that before, but they did. One gentleman made a statement, said, well, I said, yes, God on the Mountain bought that bus. I said, yeah, He did. Because the song did, but God did too, you know, so it was the God on the Mountain that did it.
If ever there was a classic example of the perfect song for an artist, God on the Mountain was the perfect song for the McKameys.
When you heard the McKameys sing God on the Mountain, you felt like they had lived God on the Mountain. That song was, you had the feeling was their life.
If you turned on a radio at that time, practically anywhere in the country, if you found a gospel station, if you did not hear God on the Mountain immediately, all you had to do was hang around 10, 15 minutes, and before long you would hear the intro to that song. Everywhere you turned, all you heard was God on the Mountain. It was a phenomenon.
When I first heard the song God on the Mountain, I was eating lunch and we had the big stereo, the big box stereo, and I heard the McKameys singing God on the Mountain, and all of a sudden I heard Sister Peg say, "He's still God." I literally, for just a few seconds, I got choked on my food because I got so excited. I got up out of my chair and ran in there and turned the stereo up, and I said, "I've got to learn this song."
Steve was driving the bus, but he had the radio on, and I heard just the tail end of God on the Mountain. And I said, "Well, that was the McKameys." And I said, "Boy, that was a good song. I sure wish I could heard the first part of it." And Steve said, "Me too." And I didn't even know who the author was. And although I knew Tracy Dartt very well, and then later found out it was Tracy's song.
The first time I heard God on the Mountain was by the McKameys at the National Quartet Convention. And it, to use an old showbiz slogan, stopped the show.
Video 5, 2, take 2, 31, take 1, 32, take 2, 35, take 5.
I had co-produced and directed several long-form videos with the McKameys. When that song would come on, we would almost always swing our cameras back toward the audience, especially at NQC, where we had, some nights we'd have up to 15,000 plus people, and we would just flip all the cameras around and just take these audience shots, just really displaying for the broadcast viewers the incredible ministry of that song.
Over the years, testimonies of the song's impact continue to remind the McKameys of how a simple message can touch the hearts of people in such a powerful way.
The mail that we received from that song through the years, from prisoners, from so many people, where they'd heard that song. Jim Bakker, this is after he was in prison, and he made the statement that he couldn't have anything in prison. But some way he managed, they let him have a little transistor radio as long as he used it. And he said, "I'm running the channels, stations on that." One night, sitting there, all of a sudden I come up on this song, "He's God on the Mountain."
In prison, you begin to tell time by Christmas, not by day. If you do by day, it's called doing hard time. And I was at my 5th Christmas in prison. I turned on the radio one day. I heard the McKameys singing. And I heard this, it sounded like this wild lady, Peg, singing and laughing. Every day after that, I would turn the radio on. It seemed like no matter when I turned it on, there was the God of the mountain is the God in the valley. It pierced into my inner soul.
He'd never met us. He didn't know us. And then after he went out here to Branson, after he got out, we was aimed to be out that way, and he got us to come by. They kept us apart because they said he's going to fall all to pieces. And he did, and we did too.
I've waited for this moment to meet these people.
Thank you.
I just wanted to say thank you. You helped save my life. Thank you. Thank you, guys. I got to see Peg, and I know she thought I was crazy. I hugged her like a crazy man. Oh, I hope you like me, because I sure love you. I don't care if you don't like me, I still love you. I had been on the mountaintops. I had mountaintop friends. But Jesus, I learned, is the valley walker. It is probably the most impacting song of my life. I never can hear it without crying. Because the God of the mountain is the God of the valley. This is the truth of the gospel. He says, I'll never, never leave you. These are the words of Jesus. It actually says, I'll never leave you nor forsake you, but in the Greek it means never, never, never. And this is the impact of this song, that I can tell the world, He'll never, never, never leave you. I wish I could give it to every broken person. I wish they could hear it the way I hear it, because it's a healing song. The God on the mountain is truly the God in the valley, because in the valley He restores your soul. Do they still make you sing this song a lot?
Yes, sir, every time. Yes, sir. I sing
Please
it.
don't stop singing
No, I
it.
won't.
You know, some people get tired of singing the same songs over and over.
don't.
But please, this song is a healing song.
Yes, sir.
This song put the salve on my broken heart.
Hallelujah. Thank God.
It was 1995, and Tracy Dartt was in his 7th year as pastor of the little church on the mountain.
We were ministering to a small group of people, about 29 people, I think, when we came, and then that swelled up to about 90 or 100.
We'd been at the church for a few years, and I just kind of felt like the people needed a different voice. It was time for me to move on, maybe to another church.
Now, Tracy had just started to write songs again. This was probably part of why Stoney and I started thinking that music was what Tracy really should be doing.
It seemed that the music that I was writing, instead of being geared to a soloist, was stuff I was writing for groups.
Tracy wrote one song with a particular group in mind, the group led by his old friend Billy Brisendine, the Regents of Southern California.
I called Tracy and I said, Tracy, would you consider going with us to Nashville? I want to record, and the bass singer's not going to be able to make it, and I don't want to miss this session. He said, well, sure, I'll go with you. By the way, he said, I've written a song for you. He said, it's going to fit you. I believe I want you to have it. And I said, well, I'm anxious to hear it. He said, the name of it, Your Blesser Ain't Never Been Blessed. And so I said, well, bring it. And so we stood around the piano. I love to sit and listen at the old time singing and those sweet redemption songs.
When they tell me of a heaven and the love that God has given, I get happy and I sing along.
Yeah, because it's got that old-fashioned stuff, you know, and then it breaks off into an old-fashioned harmony.
Your blesser ain't never been blessed till they sing about amazing grace.
Ben Speer was our producer, and it was a real privilege to introduce that song.
When they went to Nashville to record it, it got picked up by the Cathedral Quartet, and they put it on 2 of their last 3 albums.
Tracy started to see that Stoney and I might be right. This might be the direction the Lord was taking us.
As soon as we started praying about it, people started calling up that I hadn't heard from for 10 years and said, hey, can you come sing for us? Can you come sing for us? It was obvious the Lord wanted us back out on the road again. Our son Forrest moved back out to California to join us, and we'd make a family quartet.
At the end of that time, our son Forrest felt like he needed to be home with his family, and so the 3 of us went on, Tracy and I and Stoney. We traveled for about 8 years, just the 3 of us, before we added our 4th member.
For more than 6 decades, the Weatherfords have remained a landmark in Southern gospel, continuing a tradition of excellence in both music and ministry. But in 1992, it all came to a stop when founding member Earl Weatherford passed away. Though life without Earl is sometimes difficult, God continues to make a way.
The Weatherfords have been really blessed to have a good relationship with Bill Gaither. He's been good to me. He put the Weatherfords back on the map when everybody thought we were through. When Bill asked me to do the song God on the Mountain on his taping, nobody had done that before. I was the first to do God on the Mountain, and I was very proud to do that. Time went by, and they called Lynda Randle. They wanted her to sing God on the Mountain. If I were Tracy Dartt, I would be thrilled to death that Lynda Randle recorded my song. She is a beautiful person inside and out.
Lynda Tate was born and raised in Washington, D.C. She was one of 7 brothers and sisters, born to Nathal and Maxine Tate.
I had one brother, my brother Bill, who was the only child my parents had for 15 years. Then God gave them 6 more. But during that time they had Bill, they didn't know Christ. And they did my dad's story on the lives of great Christians, you know, the Moody broadcast. And I was driving in the car and I'm hearing my dad's story played on the radio. And my dad was like this, he was a gangster, literally. I mean, I'm listening, I'm going, what? My dad gambled and he carried guns and he did this and he what? And he was an alcoholic. I mean, he just, drank a lot and all just caroused. And it was so amazing because the Lord knew not to give them the 6 of us before Christ, because they probably would have just, I don't know what they would have done to themselves or to us.
It was while listening to a gospel radio broadcast that Nathal Tate came to know Christ.
At that time, he and my mom were separated. They were living in separate places. God got a hold of my dad, my mother, my brother, the family got back together, and the 6 of us were born into a godly family, a godly home.
Lynda began singing at the age of 17 when she was placed in an all-white choir at the Christian school she attended.
I was the only black kid in the choir, this Songs of God Truth, and they started singing Negro spirituals, and so I was eligible, and I got song after song, competition after competition. God began to use music. But for a minute, it was just that. There was no ministry, you know, it was hyped and, you know, look at me, and pretty lame. It was pretty bad, but God began to really show me the ministry side of music that I had never seen. And so I began to pray that God would anoint this voice, that it wouldn't just be a voice that people would hear a song and go away and be the same. You know, I would want people to hear the message of the music.
As Lynda began to use her voice for the Lord, God was preparing to bring a special person into her life, a young man by the name of Michael Randle.
I saw her on TV here in Kansas City on TV 50. I was flipping through the channels. This is verified by my brother, Dennis. They call him Moses, so he doesn't lie. And I see this beautiful chocolate woman singing The Lighthouse. And I'm zooming in, and I don't see a ring on her finger. I called my older brother, Dennis, into the room, and I said, you see that woman right there? I said, that woman is my wife. Long story short, we met. We started dating. We dated for actually about 2 years. And it's history. We fell in love, got married, have 2 beautiful kids. There's a preaching and a singing ministry that we have together, and of course, preaching and singing go together.
To hear my husband preach, you have not even seen, he puts a new meaning to animation. I'm on the edge of my seat when he's preaching.
I think she's a beautiful communicator of the gospel through the method of singing. And when I preach, she's there behind me, supporting me in any way that she can. So we support one another and play off one another in that way.
An important moment in Lynda's ministry came when she was invited to sing at a women's conference in Tempe, Arizona. She would share the stage with special speakers Patsy Claremont and Gloria Gaither.
I'm looking at this brochure and I'm thinking, I cannot believe this. There's Gloria, there's me, and there's Patsy. And I'm going, what's wrong with this picture? I didn't feel like I belonged because, I mean, this is just too big. And the Lord just sweetly spoke to my heart on the plane, saying, Lynda, you need to go and be the Lynda I created you to be, and just let me take care of this. So I got there, met Gloria, it was wonderful, and from the stage, she says, I love her and I want to take her home. She really did want to take me home because she told Bill about me for about 2 or 3 years, and Bill at the time was after my brother Michael that's in DC Talk. He had him try out for the Gaither vocal band, and that's another whole story. And while that was going on, I was kind of in my little private prayer closet saying these words. Father, would you let Bill Gaither know there's still a daughter in Jesse's house? I just felt like God really did want to connect me with Bill and Gloria.
Lynda recorded an album at Bill Gaither's studio in Indiana. After hearing the project, Bill invited Lynda to the taping of a Gaither homecoming video.
He said, well, hon, we do these videos. He said, would you like to come to a taping? And so I said, sure. And he says, I'll have you sing. I said, that's great. I had never done a video tape, so I didn't know you sat for 3 days and you'd sing about 100 songs a day, you know. You get a couple of breaks in between. And so I kind of stayed poised for 3 days. I tried to always, you know, stay ready because he's going to call me anytime. Well, he didn't call me. And he was so apologetic afterwards. And I said, oh, Bill, that's okay. I said, I was just happy to be here.
Her chance to perform at a Gaither homecoming came the following year when she stepped up to the mic and sang One Day Jesus. Bill Gaither and friends were amazed.
I can still feel the anointing on that moment. That was the beginning of more opportunities to sing on the Gaither videos. And of course, the prize was the day he sent me God on the Mountain.
Bill sent Lynda this song, God on the Mountain. I remember where I was at the time. I was in the kitchen when she was playing the song through the house.
It was country, really country, the version I got, and I go, I don't do country. I mean, that's just not what I sing.
There are some people who listen to music first. There's some people who listen to the lyrics first. So I tend to listen to the lyrics.
I was about to send the song back. I'll never forget, Lily Weatherford had done the demo on it. I thought, wow, low voice. Felt pretty good, you know, kind of something in common there. I was about to send it back and tell Bill that thanks but no thanks kind of a thing.
To me, the song made sense. Then it just, regardless of its style, it made sense to me. So I said, you know, you need to listen to this thing. You need to, you know, rethink that.
It was also during a very difficult time in my own personal life. We had a lot of people close together, my dad, sister, uncles, friends, just pass on. I knew God was faithful. I knew that he would bring me through. But this dark veil had covered me, had covered me for a long time. And my husband said, sweetie, did you really listen to the lyrics? I had not really listened to the lyrics. He says, I think you can do that song. And I began to sing that song, and it began to just settle in my spirit. And I remember the first time I sang it in Asheville, North Carolina, I believe, at the Coves, Billy Graham, the Coves. And we're doing a taping there, the Mountain Homecoming. And of course, that was perfect for the Mountain Homecoming. And I don't even think I knew what was happening when it was happening on the onset. I just knew that Bill called me after it aired on television, and they had a huge, huge response to that song.
Life is easy when you're up on the mountain. You've got peace of mind.
It has gotten, when I say out of control at the Gaither events, it would be fun to have a camera at the table at halftime.
If she goes into a concert, there will be people who come up to the table and they'll say, well, is she gonna sing that mountain song? Or they have all kind of different names for the song. It's God on the Mountain, but they say, is she gonna sing that valley song? She gonna sing that one of that God, that thing, mountain things, valley sing, whatever. They'll make up all these different names, but I know what they're talking about. They want to know if she's gonna sing the God on the Mountain. And if she doesn't, it's not like it's a concert until she does that song.
For the God on the mountain is still God in the valley. When things go wrong, he'll make them right. And the God of the good times is still God in the bad times. Oh, the God of the day
we go to Norway, it's literally like an anthem. When I begin to sing the song, they stand up. The people just stand up, praise, they worship. I got flowers a few years ago because it was the #1 song in Norway. And I was singing the song in particular in the Bahamas, in Barbados. I'd sung a lot of songs before then, but when I started singing God on the Mountain, people came and reached for my hand from the stage. I had to start the track over and sing it again. The audience sang the song to us. They sang it to us in Barbados. They sang it to us in Norway. People want to know the God that gives you that kind of hope.
Oh, the God on the mountain is still God in the valley. When things go wrong, He'll make them right. And the God of the good times is still God in the bad times. Oh, the God of the day is still God in the night.
Because of the overwhelming response from that song, we sent out an e-blast to our supporters, and we said, those who are on our mailing list, and we said, we're going to write this devotional, and we want you to send in your God on the Mountain stories. I mean, how has this song impacted you? We got an overwhelming response.
Of course, we have stories of people that were maybe healed of cancer, people that have been suicidal. I've got people with crack cocaine stories.
Alcohol and drugs, they called that a valley. Divorce, death. But there were so many different ways that people were interacting with the song. I just thought it was very powerful. So it was very easy to write.
You're thinking you've heard the last story in a way, but they keep coming, and my husband and I said we would have to do book 2, book 3, book 4. I mean, because we get every week in the office, either we'll get a phone call, we'll get mail, snail mail as you call it now, emails. Somebody's going to be talking about God on the Mountain, and of course on the weekend concerts, it's God on the Mountain, God on the Mountain. I've never seen anything like it in my life, ever. It's not even about me. I think anybody could sing the song because the message will stand by itself. It so happens that God has this sovereign plan, this unique marriage with this voice and these lyrics and this whole country vibe. And I think it adds something just really, really special to the song. I agree with that, but I know that anybody could sing it. People come up and say, I sing it in my church, but I don't sing it like you do. I go, but the message is the same. But it's something so profoundly powerful and anointed about those lyrics.
I'm not entirely sure how I got so focused on mountains and valleys. Nothing grows on the top of the mountains. It's all rock and ice and snow. The growth is always down in the valley.
Life is easy when you're up on the mountain. You've got peace.
Of course, the valleys of our lives are the hardest things for us to go through, but that's what makes us grow, not the mountain.
It's real easy to sing and get on your stump and say a lot of things, you know, when things are going well. But when you're hurting and it's tough, it's good when you can say, you're still God.
I don't know if we can ever discover the real secret of a great song, but we come close to it when we know that it touches people's hearts. That first line of God on the Mountain, life is easy when you're up on that mountain. You can't just stop there. Everybody kind of just pays attention. Really? Well, yeah, we know that. What's the second line? We want to hear the second line.
When a song is theologically correct, it resonates. I mean, it doesn't matter what style it is. It doesn't matter if it's country or if it's hip hop. I mean, two extremes. It doesn't matter. You know, it doesn't matter if it got, it has a beat to it. It doesn't matter if it's got strings to it. But if the song is correct, if it relates to God in a right manner, then it's gonna resonate with the heart of people.
You know, the Bible says He sent His word and He healed them. He healed them first of all spiritually, but His word also has a healing effect on us bodily. And this song has that kind of message. It's a spiritual therapeutic song.
I talk a lot about faith and faith builders. It was a faith song. Life is easy when you're up on the mountain, and which is true. But when you're down in the valley and you lose all hope, that's when your faith is built.
It just brings the simple truth of God just compacted in such a simple way that anybody can latch on to it. I mean, they can say, hey, there He is, God. He's not out of my reach. Wherever I'm at, that's where He is. And we have to be reminded, because usually when we're in the valley, we've lost sight, we've lost track, we get down on ourselves, and we don't go to our security that we have.
Sometimes I'm in the valley because of my own doing. I blew it. I took a wrong turn. I could have been on the mountain, but by my own choices, and maybe even disobedience, or maybe just trying to do life, I went in the valley. He could say, well, you went the wrong path. If you want to go in that valley, go for it. But I'm out of here. But that's not God. You go in the valley, and right there He is.
The valley isn't a bad place, really. It's just a different place than the mountain. The things that happen to you there are still things that God is working for your good. There are just certain things that you can only learn by being in a particular position.
He takes us through all these circumstances of life so He can make us more like His Son. And His goal is in the mountains and the valleys. He's chipping away everything that doesn't look like Jesus. And He's hoping that we will see that that's where life is. And the greatest joy of life is to try to be more like Him.
My dad, he would say, and my nickname was Chub, he would say, Chub, baby, if you don't mean it, don't sing it. And I think the place that I was in when I was going through that difficult time and loving family that's gone on, I know that comes out through the music, that I'm a living testament of God's faithfulness. That I'm not just saying God is just good because life is just wonderful and perfect and everything is great, but I'm able to say God has been with me in the valley and He's brought me out through the dark night.
We get hundreds of emails about storms that people have gone through. They didn't feel like they would have made it had it not been for songs like Till the Storm Passes By, God on the Mountain. I never get tired of hearing those testimonies. I told Mosey Lister one time, after I'd sung Till the Storm Passes By, that he wrote, I said, Mosey, you didn't know 40 years ago when you wrote that song, you were writing it for me. But you did. Because I've had some storms in my life. I had a daughter to die at 49 years old, cocaine addict. You don't understand those things, but till the storm passes by, help me through that.
We never get over some tragedies in our life, the loss of a loved one, but we get through it. He says we grieve, but we don't grieve like those that have no hope. And so He's saying, go ahead and grieve, go ahead and cry, go ahead and express the fact that you've been, down in the valley.
When my mother died, I had been contemplating coming off the road to take care of her. She'd had a stroke. And we girls, the 5 of us, would take care of Mom. And I wondered, Lord, is this your plan? Do you want, if that's what you want from me, I want to do that. So just speak to my heart about what you want me to do. I got the word that my mama died like on a Saturday, and we came home and went and viewed the body and did all, had the funeral and everything. But during this time, I stopped by the office for some reason. And I was sitting there in the chair, and the girls had the radio on. And so it came on to God on the Mountain. And I sat there in the chair and I wept because it comforted me. And I knew exactly how other people felt, because I didn't have a clue. I'm coming to the office and I'm going to be hearing a song. And God just used it there. The Holy Spirit just had me in that chair, had that radio on. And that's the way other people are too. And I know they're serious when they say that. And it's not a light thing, it's a God thing. And so I always take time to listen to what God's done in their life through that song. And it's a wonderful joy to my heart to do that.
What I'm really in love with is the impact on the lives of people. That's what I'm in love with. You can't measure it. You can say, hey, it went number 1. It went number 1 for 5 months. That's nothing compared to the millions of lives that's potentially touched by one song. Every person changed by that song will say, it was the message in the music that changed my life. It became part of me. And I took that song and I put it inside my spirit, and I lived my life knowing that the God on the mountain is still the God in the valley. And when I face those tough times, my spirit sings a song that was placed into there, a message through music.
Continuing a legacy that started more than 4 decades ago, the Darts are still lifting up the name of Jesus and sharing the good news of the gospel.
I had dreams and I had plans, was the center of my world, till Jesus Christ came in, became my Savior and my Lord.
In a 45-foot bus they call Steamboat Willie, the Darts travel throughout North America, averaging more than 200 concerts per year. Life on the road is not always glamorous. Behind the scenes, the group members wear many hats. But when it's all said and done, the purpose remains clear. It's about touching hearts with a song and changing lives with a message of hope.
The thing I love the most about the Darts is their heart for the Lord and their ministry that they have. I couldn't ask to travel with another greater family. They practice what they preach. They are who they are on the platform and off. The last few years that I've been with them, we have seen hundreds and hundreds of people saved, and that just gives you a wonderful feeling that you can't even put in words.
With all the albums we've been doing now, we, of course, have written almost all of the music ourselves.
Many of these songs, someone has added a word or a bridge or an ending, so that we all contribute, but they're mostly Tracy's songs.
We try to write music in all kinds of different styles. I don't like to be categorized as doing one particular kind of music. We have a couple of comedy songs.
He writes funny songs that people remember, because there are so many more serious gospel songs than funny, that the funny ones stay with you.
I wonder if David danced the polka like they do up in Minnesota.
I never knew that you could have a Christian comedy song and just have so much fun with it. The Christian walk is something that is fun, and when you can incorporate comedy in some of your songs, that's brilliant. People will come up to us after a concert and they will say, we know that that song is by Tracy Dartt. He has a way of writing that speaks to your heart, it gets the message across, and in every song he uses biblical principles.
The ability to write lyrics in a way that would come naturally, just as if you were speaking the words. That's something that's characteristic of my dad's music. And I think that helps people more easily relate to the message of the song, I think that it helps them better remember the songs.
And the God on the mountain.
When he introduces the song God on the Mountain, he'll brag about the other people that have sung it. But really, the song is bigger than a man, it's bigger than a group. It has become something that I think will stand the test of time, because people will continue to have hard times. But the other thing that will stand the test of time is God's promise and his power.
There's still God in the night.
National Quartet Convention asked me to bring the songwriters into Freedom Hall. In this particular year, I had a wonderful connection with Tracy, Dartt, and the family. And I just wanted the folks to know the writer. You know, a lot of times they know the song, but they don't connect the song with the writer. We had that opportunity this year to bring Tracy, Sharon, Stone, and BJ, and it let us introduce the writer of a song that they all know.
Come on up, guys. How many people have ever heard the song God on the Mountain? Tracy Dartt wrote God on the Mountain. And this is the family, and I wanted them to sing, and they have a unique style, and I want them to sing a song. First of all, I want you to thank the writer that wrote such a great song as God on the Mountain, and I want you to hear a new song from the Darts. Give them a nice welcome tonight to Louisville. Come on. This is Stone Mountain right here.
The children were thirsting in the wilderness, and Moses cried, "Oh Lord, what shall I do?" Then he heard the voice of God saying, "Moses, take your rod, strike the rock, and waters will come flowing through. Let me be a rock from which the living waters flow. Let them grow into a river deep and wide, though I may never know everywhere the wall."
I know that some of the most important songs that he has written are God on the Mountain and The Last Sunday, but there's so much more to Tracy's music than just God on the Mountain. When I was preparing for my first solo album, Tracy gave me his songs to look at. I found this song going through a number of songs, a song called In the Lord's Hands. First of all, the title caught me because my grandmother, who led me to the Lord, was a very special lady in my life. She was the most godly woman that I've ever known. And one of the things that she would say to me all the time growing up as a kid, no matter what I was going through, is, "You are in the Lord's hands." The title of the song caught me, and I started reading the words. Never heard the melody before in my life. And as I was reading the words, the tears started coming down my face. It was a song that I felt.
In the Lord's hands, there's no better place for our broken dreams to be.
No matter what trial we're going through, no matter what valley we're going through, no matter what sickness or pain we might be having or going through, we are in his hands, and he has promised to take care of us.
Just place your trust in his mighty power and your life within his hands, within his hands.
We have had an unexpected turn of events. Although we knew that Tracy's kidneys were failing, and we've just kept on the road as long as we could. Now the time has come that we have to stay home because of continual medical treatments that have to take place several times a week.
None in heaven above or in hell below against his will can stand. When God hears the plea of his child in need, who's placed his life within his hands.
Our son and our fourth member of the group, BJ Speer, are out traveling now and doing fine, growing in their ministry, finding God faithful without us there. Our desire is to get back out on the road, to be four of us again, to write more songs, to sing more places. Do we need to go out and work in the garden and say God has given us this time to rest? I don't know. I just want to be thinking that I'm willing to serve the Lord and that I want to be doing whatever it is He means for me to be doing now. And I really hope that it's going to still be music. But we're God's people. We've given our lives into His hands. And I expect He has a few things, so to speak, up His sleeve. He wears a robe, you know. It's up the sleeve of the robe.
We just really have felt people's prayers on our behalf and feeling the peace of God on us to do whatever it is we have to do to keep going on.
We're going to come through it because God promised He would take us through any situation. He told us He'd bring us through. We're on our way back up the mountain, and I'm looking forward to the view.
I think it's an important legacy to leave for the songwriters in years to come, to realize the importance of spiritual truth and doctrine in music, and at the same time to be able to write that doctrine and those truths into a song in a way that people can relate to in their everyday life.
The legacy that I would love to leave would be hope. Music is a way that God uses to help people understand just how deeply they are loved. But also, as far as the spoken word is concerned, God's kind of taking me into women's ministries and speaking and encouraging women. I don't even know all the ins and outs about that. I just know that God is kind of calling me into deeper waters. It's what I call a good scary. You don't necessarily know where you're going, but you know who's leading. And so it's easy to follow. So I'm just excited about the future and what all God has planned.
When I reach God's throne, I will walk up to the throne and say, I have nothing left to give because I've given it all to you. And if people can say she gave her life for Jesus Christ and really mean it, to me my life would have been worth living. I would like for my legacy to be she lived her life for Jesus Christ.
When you look back on it, you feel like the time you've spent, the sacrifices you've made, it's valuable. The music, the ministry is valuable. It means something to people. It builds and encourages them and reminds them of the truths that make their life good. It just seems a lot more important than a lot of other ways you could have spent your life.
It's a lot of fun when you feel like you're doing something that's helping the people and you're bringing honor to Him. This town, on all the state highways, going toward Knoxville and going toward Lake City, which is state highways, they got a sign so big, welcome to the home of the gospel singing McKameys. The Lord has allowed us to have the respect of the town, the people around here. I think I'd want to leave a legacy like that it's worth it to try to do it right.
God placed us here at a certain time and in His time. before I leave, I would like to do all that He has, that He wants me to do and intended me to do from the beginning. Surely I won't do all, but I would love to do that. And I'd love to, for people to say, she really loved the Lord and she really wanted to lift Him high.
If we bring honor to Him, we can't hardly go wrong. If we just think on His name, it pleases Him. So if He's happy with us just thinking on Him, when we talk about Him, He must get excited then. So let's tell the world about Him.
God on the Mountain is a very simple song. It says in a very simple way, this is what our relationship to God is all about. He is sovereign. He is God.
He is there, whatever we're going through. I think that's the reason it has lived as long as it has, and it's not through yet. It's going to last on and on.
Still to this day, the legacy of God on the Mountain follows me throughout everything I do. We still get letters about it, we still get calls about it, we still hear testimonials of how that song has touched someone's life.
God on the Mountain is the type thing that lives after a writer dies and after the singers pass away. That song will still be there and somebody will pick it out and they'll record it. One gospel song can change an immeasurable number of lives.
God allows some writers to write songs that are life-changing songs, and that's the promise we have in God on the Mountain.
It's the Lord doing it. He just has taken the very simplest thing, 72 words and 4 chords, and used it to really touch a lot of hearts and lives. It's a humbling thing.
I'll tell you what, I love that song, and it's touched a whole lot of people's lives. But I'm going to trust and pray that the Lord blesses my dad with health and a good long life yet to come so that he can write many, many more songs. And what a blessing it would be if he blessed us with another song like God on the Mountain.
When you're up on the mountain and you've got peace of mind like you've never known. But when things change and you're down in the valley, don't lose faith. Still God in the night. It's still God in